start this morning section. The first competition is two of the competition team is from Tsinghua University and also Royal ROC Military Academy. So I think we have to decide who will be the team A and who will be the team B. So, so you want to present first or present later? You are okay. So team A will be Tsinghua University. You will be team B. So okay. So I think in our schedule we don't have any preparation time, so we need preparation time. Okay, so we start the presentation, and you have 10 minutes for presentation, and later you have 10 minutes. Yeah, please start.
Hello everyone. Our problem is number 15, boiled egg. And in this problem, we have to find out some methods to detect the degree to which an egg is cooked by boiling. And we also have to investigate the sensitivity of our method. And we have two methods. First, from mechanics approach. We have a circular wheel frame, and we put the egg on the wheel frame. And because when an egg is boiled, is cooked, it will started to denature, and the oscillation of it will be different. As you can see, the raw egg stops stop oscillating faster, while the boiled egg still oscillates. And this is our preliminary data. And, in this problem, we have to find out what the gamma here is for different degree of egg. And this is our theory. When the egg is cooked, the liquid part starts to decrease, and resulting in the damping of inside of the egg will be lower. And also, the solid part of the egg will increase, and resulting in the rotational inertia of the egg will be increased. And these two factors will make gamma lower. And we can write down the equation of egg, the equation of motion of the egg here. And this torque D is the torque caused by damping. And because the damping will be caused by the external part of egg and internal part of egg, so we decide to write down as dEx and dIm as external damping coefficient and internal damping coefficient respectively. By solving this equation of motion, we can write down here. And to further simplify the question, we have four assumptions. First, we approximate the egg with a cylinder. And second, we assume that the radius of the wheel frame is much more bigger than the radius of the egg. And third, we assume that theta is small. And finally, the damping coefficient B is dEx plus dIm. And while the external damping coefficient is a constant, and the dIm is c times 1 minus m prime. M prime here is defined as the mass of the denatured portion over mass of the whole egg minus mass of the shell. And the second term is the gamma we want to find. And by gamma over gamma of the raw egg, we can decide what degree the hen's egg is cooked by boiled. And this is our result. We find out that DEX here is 6.2 kilometer times meter square over second, while C here is 7.3. And this is our first method. And our second method is by optical approach. Because when the egg is boiled, the opacity of the egg will be different. And here you can see the opacity of the boiled egg is much more lower than the raw egg. And this is our theory. By using light meter to we can measure the illumination of the egg. And because illumination is proportional to the luminous plot over the distance to the power of 2. So we can change the distance between the light meter and the egg. And graph it, and by the slope, we can find out what the luminous plot is for different degree of egg. And this is our result. And we assume that, to simplify your question, we assume that the egg consists of different layers. From shell to boiled albumin, raw albumin, yolk, and once again raw albumin, boiled albumin and shell. And for different layer of it, the absorption coefficient will be different. And in the process of cooking, the layer of the egg will be different. We assume that the egg is cooked from outside to inside. So first the raw albumin will start to denature. And after all the albumin denature, the yolk started to denature. And finally all the egg is denature. And we can determine the degree to which the egg is boiled by phi of the egg over phi of the raw egg. And we can cut the cooking to two portions. From the first stage to the third stage, the yolk is all raw. And in the final stage, the yolks started to boil. Here, this is the equation for our theory for the egg when the yolk is raw. When it's used when the yolk starts to denature. Finally, we have to measure the absorption coefficient for the raw egg and raw albumin, raw yolk, and cooked albumin and cooked yolk. And this is our setup. We put different thickness of egg inside the beaker and try to find out what the coefficient of absorption is. And this is our result. By fitting the line, and we can now have our theory. And this is our conclusion. We define the sensitivity to be delta y over delta x. Delta y is the difference between the all denatured egg and the raw egg. And the delta x is from delta x represents the difference between the raw egg and old denatured egg. And as you can see, the sensitivity of our second method is better because the delta y is much larger than the mechanics method. Also, the standard deviation of our second method is lower than the first method. So, our conclusion is our second method is much more better than our first method. Yeah, so the optics method is better. Thank you.
Now, the QP has 10 minutes for your presentation.
Morning, Professor. You come from our military academy. Yeah, I'm reporter Cheng. This is my members. Wang Xuzhen in the Yung-Yuan and voting way. This is my member, Chung. Our boiled egg it means suggests that non-invasive methods to detect the degree to which egg was cooked by boiling water investigate the sensitivity of your method. It means don't break the egg shell to release the maturity of eggs. And somebody use it to test to rotate the eggs and like the screws to make two ways. But we use our ways to control its sensitivity. This is our outline. The first is question, and the principle, design, result, and the conclusion. The first we introduction the eggs. The protein, it means becomes sticky at 60 degrees and lost the mobility above 80 degrees. And the yolk lost the mobility at 75 degrees and solidify quickly at 70 degrees. And if we want to make the golden egg, it means hard protein and soft yolk. When we use the 100 temperature to 5 minutes, this source is from this website. And our principle is to, when we boil the egg and use the light to shine to the egg bottom, and we can see the different transparency. This is raw eggs transparency, and this is the 12 minions to make the eggs transparency. And this is our equipment. Our equipment, we use the six equipment. First is the electronic lever. We control eggs mass to make our experiment. And boil the eggs to boil the water to the pot. And the laser gun to control its surface temperature. And the thermometer sink to remove its residual temperature. And the red laser and in our box. This is our process. First, we boil the water to 100 degrees, and then hand the eggs in the water to boil. And after we boil the egg in different minutes, we need to put the eggs into the water of 5 degrees for 20 minutes. And then measure an egg in the box to see its surface temperature, and the photograph to its transparency. Our issue is have three issues. First is, after being boiled, does the residual temperature of the egg affect the egg food? The second is how to find the relationship between heating time and the transparency degree. And the three is how to define egg maturity. The first is, after being boiled, does the residual temperature of the egg affect the egg cook? We can see this part. We cook in boiling water for 6 minutes, and the black point we can see, if we don't residual its temperature to make our design, we can see its temperature have some difference in its maturity. Well, influence its maturity. But we remove its residual temperature after 20 minutes in 5 temperature water. We can control its residual temperature. This will control maturity. So we think determine the process and the steps of the experiment. And now we can see heating time and the transparency degree. We boil the different time with our eggs, and we can see this different transparency. This L1 is raw egg, and this L is the different time. We boil the different time, we can see different transparency. And the relationship between heating time and the transparency degree. We make the plot. These three different slopes, we can see the time and the maturity have some relationship. So we can make if we want to make different maturity, we can use our way to control its maturity. And how to define egg maturity, we use this slope. The first is, if we want to make a soft boil, we control it in this slope. And the middle boil, we can control it in the middle slope. And finally is R slope. We define its maturity is 1 degree L over L0. This is our form. We can see this form, we have three different And if we want to soft boil, we use the first point. We control its time to 0 to 3. And its protein is soft and yolk is soft. But its protein is getting solid. And the middle point is hard protein. but its yolk is soft. And we can see its yolk is getting solid. And finally, hard boiled means its protein is hard and the yolk is hard. And so it means protein and yolk is getting hard. This is our end. Thank you.
Now, each team has 2 minutes to prepare, and later, Team B will ask questions to Team A. Short questions for 2 minutes, then they will ask you for 2 minutes. So you have 2 minutes to prepare what question you want to ask. Military Academy, please ask 2 minutes short questions to Tsinghua University. Yeah, please start. How do you
And how your S is mass and the shape is different, right? Is mass and the shape. The S how to pick your egg. Your egg is you understand?
We choose similar shape of V rock.
So you don't control your egg in
We control our egg in shape. We pick similar shape of egg to rock.
do you have a picture? Similar egg. If it's big or different, the second is very small, will have some different.
The difference between the egg won't be that significant.
And your two methods, you use the light, right?
Yeah.
You put it in a, you use your egg, put it in a light, but we just can see the raw and the boiled. But we think it's not more sensitive to its maturity. You only have the raw and the end boiled, but you didn't have a little.
We do quality, different degree of egg here.
And how do you make this plot? Do you use which you have or?
We feed the line here. Use computer to find out the feed line for the student.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, time is up. So now Tsinghua University please ask a short question to ROC Military Academy for 2 minutes. Please start.
Okay, it seems like you only did your experiment once. But when you do your experiment more times, will the result also be the same?
Yes, we use, but we think this is too not clear to its maturity, so we don't. Finally, we make this with only show to this paper.
And will the different size of egg will have something to do with your results?
Sorry, I don't.
Will the size of egg have something to do with your results, or?
So we control its mass and its size.
So you use mass of the egg to control your results?
Yeah.
What is the average of your data, or some more detail of your data.
This data. Which data?
The graph one, the figure one.
This. We use the original to make this plot.
Another one that is here.
We use the LE row and the L. The row F and the void F is different time to control its relation.
No, is this 7 point the average of your experiment or your?
Sorry, I think
It's over
time is
the
up.
time.
So you want to add, you can have a very short answer. Or you can choose not to answer. That's okay.
Nice.
Okay, so I think the following is the 2 minutes preparation. Then for the further discussion. The discussion time will be 8 minutes in total. So please start your preparation. Then your preparation. Please both teams get onto the stage. Then we start the discussion. Because for the recording, so please use the microphone so we can hear you better. Yes. Yeah, the sound is okay.
Okay, and once again on page 12. Are these points the average of your experimental you only do it once, or yeah? So this point only represent one experiment. You didn't do it repeatedly.
So we did all we have had this error.
So
we have this error bar.
So where's the error bar?
This error bar.
We have control it, but we don't show to this paper. Sorry. And then I want how do you think if your act is but its maturity is right? You only show the raw egg and you think the egg is maturity right. You boil it how to in your limit.
Excuse me? I don't quite understand.
Your eggs you boil it right.
Yeah.
But we don't know you boil it in which minute. Your egg.
We know the degree of denature m prime by after we measure the luminous flux of the egg. We actually break the egg and we measure the mass of the liquid portion of egg and solid portion of egg to determine what m prime is. Because we didn't use the minute of boiling egg to define our degree of denature.
Okay, thanks. May I ask you your 11 paper? Could you speak more clearly to this paper?
Well, this is just our this is our preliminary results without the fitting line. And for different m prime, we have different phi of the egg over phi of row egg. And by phi over phi row, we can determine after we find out the fitting line, we can determine what the degree of denature is. Okay, and you use photograph to determine the transparency of the egg. And how long is your exposure time to take the photo?
20 every million.
No, I mean the period of you to take one
We
photo.
take a lot of picture and in every million. Every second.
I mean your exposure time to take one photo.
You ask me how long I picture this.
How long you take a photo of your egg?
The raw egg is first we don't, and the raw egg we have to put the egg in our. For example, if 2 million, we boil 2 million, right?
Yeah.
And remove and put it into the raw 5 degree egg for 20 million, and we put it into our box and the picture.
Okay, fine.
How do you control the residual temperature in your experiment? Do you control its residual
No,
temperature?
we don't need to control it because we didn't measure up egg and do have the temperature has nothing to do with our experience.
But I think the boiled egg the residual temperature will affect the boiled egg.
Yeah, but that's because you define because your experiment used the time of boiling to define to measure it, and we didn't use time to measure our experience to do our experiment. And because the temperature of water is hard to control, and how do you think the
water is
correctness of you to define the degree by using time to define it?
the water in you want to ask me how to control the water for 100 temperature?
No, and also between the normal temperature and boiling temperature, the boil point of water. Between from 0 degree to 100 degree. How do you control? How do you know you can use time to?
We have a laser gun to see the temperature.
Okay. Okay, and I want to ask you about how do you define the degree of boiling? To which degree the egg is boiled by boiling water? How do you define M prime? How do you define maturity?
Maturity. This picture. We use our define 1 degree decrease the L over L0. So we put the time in it, we can see this material. If you want to make the stop void, we control the time in 0 to 3. And different, if we want to make different void, we can make different time. So time over.
Okay, I think the time is up. So now, team, you have 3 minutes to preparing your concluding remark. Okay. We start the concluding remark, starting from Team B, RC Military Academy. Please start your concluding remark for 2 minutes.
So we think its theory is complex, and its design theory is too simple, and the design of this experiment process is too simple, and its error is the control its error is good. And the defect is inside hidden maturity is at too big. And its effect and in our conclusion, our we have analysis of this problem, and we base the analysis of problem 3 and the experimental design, and we have good results confirmed 0.
Okay, now I think Tsinghua University, you can start your concluding remark.
Okay, first, we're going to say that we choose similar shape of egg to do our experiment. And we think that the definition of maturity should be like this: m prime equals the mass of the natural portion over mass of the whole egg minus mass of the shell. And your definition of your experiment is not quite clear. And you define it to be 1 minus L over L0, but it is your experiment's results and not maturity of the egg. And we think that using cooking time to define maturity is bad because the different method of boiling will affect the maturity of the egg. So just using the cooking time to define it might not be very good. And also in your figure, we think that you should show your error bar to be more clear. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks both team. So now we move on to the question from the juries. So please, any question from the juries?
Okay, I have a question, Tsinghua. 16, page 16. Can you explain what do you determine the N plus? Because your plot is with the N plus with the x-axis. Okay, how do you determine the N plus? N plus.
After we measure the luminous flux, we actually break it up and we measure the mass of the solid part of the egg and liquid part of the egg to know what the M prime is.
So I mean, if that, so your x-axis should be changed to the y-axis because you can measure the result and the degree
here,
of
here,
the neutral is you deduce the quantity, right?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, that would be better.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And another BT. How many experiments you do? How many times? Because only an egg.
We make egg to 4 experiments. 2 million we make more 10 times, and 4 million more 10 times.
So just the 18 execution, what's the error bar? I mean, you should do some experiment to do the average for your case. Okay?
Yeah.
Maybe the egg is a mass and the value should be considered.
Thanks, Steven.
So, any questions? No? Okay, I have a question. I think first to Team B. Did you ever try that you get the maturity and the time curve? Did you try to cook into certain time? Then you check the maturity. Is it
Right.
consistent with your?
Like with the first website, if we want to make a.
No, I mean, did you try this or not? You get in the result you have a maturity as a function of time. So did you try to cook an egg, like for example 8 minutes? Then according to your graph, it should be something like 70% or 80% mature. Did you check this correlation after you have this relation?
Okay.
Because in the task, it says you have to check about the sensitivity. So
Yeah.
the easiest way is that you cook another batch of eggs and check if the maturity is just as the maturity you predict from your result. So did you try this or not?
Yeah, we have.
You tried?
Yeah.
Okay. So same question to Tsinghua University. Did you try this? Can you cook, if I give an egg, I said I want 60% of the protein or entire egg to be cooked.
Well,
Can
I
you tell
think-
me what's the how can you cook that egg to that degree of maturity for me?
We didn't try it, but we think it is possible because while it can be somehow complicated, but if we cook it and we take it out to measure the luminous flux of it, and if it is not mature enough, we put it back and cook it for longer time. And we think if we let's say if we want the maturity to be 0.4, we just cook it, and when the 5/5 rule gets to here, then we think it is possible for us to know that the degree of denature is 0.4.
Okay. Okay, since there's no further questions, so I think it's time for the juries to give grades. we start from the team A. So the team A should be Tsinghua University. So the grades for team A are 8, 7, 8. And the grades for the team B, ROC Military Academy, is 8, 5, 6. Okay, so I think I ought to give some comments about the grade of my grades because I give a pretty high grades for academy. Because to my knowledge, actually you make the measurement for several times, right? So I think the only fault you didn't, the only fault for your presentation is that you didn't put any error bar on it. I think that's the major fault for your presentation. And I strongly suggest you do not hide any result, except unless you have a very good reason not to show it. Okay, because according to your presentation, your experimental design is pretty good. So you can just put all the data, like the error bar, everything together. Because for this kind of experiment, we don't expect the error bar to be very small. We expect it should be huge. So just put it. Then you will let others know you can judge it later. Okay, don't hide it at the first time. And I think another thing is that you can show us that how is that picture is got, how you got that picture, the luminous one. Okay. And I think for the Tsinghua University, you did pretty. The job is pretty well done. But one thing you did miss is that you didn't check about the sensitivity. Okay. I think the sensitivity means that the easiest way is that you reproduce the cooking and use the curve to predict how well should it be cooked. I think that's one thing. Another thing is that since you got the curve, you can tell us that if you go another way around, like you measure the luminance, or then if you got a certain number, can give how well you can define about the cooking degree. I think from the curve, from the slope, you can still speak something. I think that's something you use. Okay, that's all. And I would like to thank all the both team. Then later we will have another fight. Thank you.